Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 11th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. I got quite a bit of news to talk about today. A lot of stuff coming out of UFC 247, of course, on the weekend. Major MMA promotion going to use open scoring. That'll be interesting to talk about, and a bunch of fight announcements. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with Israel Adesanya. He had some comments to make about Jon Jones that weren't very nice. Basically called Jon Jones washed up, which is pretty harsh considering Jon Jones has been basically the greatest fighter in the sport ever for over a decade. Like, as far as dominance goes inside the octagon, he was by far the most dominant fighter of the 2010s. Of course, Israel's trying to plant seeds for a future fight. I get that, but I just don't really agree with his comments. You know, I like Israel. I do think a lot of his criticisms are pretty fair generally, but this one I don't agree with at all. So here's what he said. He said, I've seen him. I've seen what I need to see. In the fifth round, he tried to turn on, but he couldn't. Compare his fifth round to my fifth round against Kelvin Gastelum. There's a difference. I think the difference there is, Kelvin Gastelum is essentially a welterweight fighting a middleweight. Dominic Reyes is a massive light heavyweight. Dominic Reyes is a much more dangerous fighter than Kelvin Gastelum. And I love Kelvin Gastelum, but to me, you can't even compare those two guys. So, again, I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to create a rift between himself and Jon Jones. I understand that, but I just don't agree with that comment. Like, I don't think those fights can be compared. And not only that, but, and I also thought Jon Jones lost his fight, guys. Remember that. But to me, Jon Jones, he did easily win that fifth round. So I know what Israel's saying. He had an amazing fifth round in that fight, and I love that fight. It was one of the greatest fights of last year. But again, I don't agree with that comparison. Adding on to what Israel said, he also said about Jon Jones, he's washed up, he's done. Best years behind him. He's still great, but he's washed up. He wasn't doing crap. He was winning rounds, but wasn't really doing anything. He was trying. There's levels to this. And basically he said it was close. If you whoever you scored it for, whatever, he says he would have scored it a draw. And basically says that he wants to see Jon Jones Raider Stadium in 2021. So again, planting seeds with that fight. I want to see this fight. I think it's going to be a good fight. I just don't agree with the comments. I think they're a little harsh, and kind of wrong, to be honest with you. I don't think Jon Jones is washed up. I think he's fought dangerous guys. I think Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes are dangerous guys. Jon Jones has been fighting literally the best competition in the UFC for over 10 years. He's still winning in fights. I didn't think he won, but he got his hand raised on those. So he must be doing something right. Judges love this guy for some reason, his last few fights, even though I thought he lost them. Israel is a great fighter in his own right, don't get me wrong, but there's a big difference between being in the UFC for 2 years and his best opponent was Robert Whitaker. He's a dangerous fighter, don't get me wrong, but look at who Jon Jones has fought. Look who he's dominated. Daniel Cormier, Gustafsson, and now Reyes, Santos beat them too. You look at Jon Jones' resume. I mean, to me, it's like you can't even compare it to anyone else. I agree he is on decline. He's 32 now. Maybe he's getting a little bit long in the tooth. He's been in the UFC since 2008, so he's been around a long time, fighting the top guys in the sport for over 10 years. But again, this win streak he had is just insane, and I don't think he's washed up. I think that's a little harsh. I do think he's on decline. He's not as great as he used to be, but washed up is not the right terminology to use about Jon Jones, in my opinion, even though I did think he lost the last fight. Speaking of Jones, the online sportbook Bet Online came out with odds yesterday to see who is favored to fight Jon Jones next, and Corey Anderson is actually the favorite. He's a minus 125 favorite to fight Jon Jones. Next up is Blachowicz at plus 275. There's a bunch of other guys there like DC, Stipe, Brock was there, and a few other guys, including Dominic Reyes, of course. To me, Corey Anderson, I think he should be favored, but I was surprised that the odds were so overwhelmingly in his favor at minus 125. I don't know if I agree with that. I think, this fight with Blachowicz is a close fight. I'll be breaking down the fight with Cole Sheldon later this morning, and in about an hour from now, we'll be breaking down that fight, and I think that's a super close fight. So to me, to have him as actually the only minus favorite, the rest of the guys were underdogs plus money. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's really a toss-up. I think Reyes could easily get that title shot in the rematch. I think Jones could still go move up to heavyweight as well and fight Stipe. So I don't think there's value in that, guys. I wouldn't bet on it. I mean, there's definitely a chance Corey Anderson gets that title shot, but I would not lay juice on that prop. I don't think there's any value on that at all. So we'll see what happens this weekend. I mean, Corey's going to, I think, need an impressive performance to get that title shot. And honestly, looking at the matchup, I'm not sure if that happens. I think it's a close fight. And I think there's a chance that it could kind of be a slog, if you ask me. So we'll see what happens with that fight this weekend. But, yeah, I think, Corey's definitely up there as far as who could get the title shot. I just wouldn't list him as an overwhelming favorite, which is basically what the sportsbooks did when he's the only minus number and the rest of the guys are plus numbers. Still talking about UFC 247. Oh man, this is funny, guys. Jessica I is calling for a rematch with Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, really? Like, wow. We know what happened last year, UFC 238 in Chicago. Valentina took off I's head basically with with a head kick. It was absolutely just vicious. Like one of the nastiest knockouts of last year and one of the most vicious knockouts in women's MMA ever. Jessica I mean, is she kidding me? Like, there's no way she's going to get this title shot rematch. I commend her for at least asking for it when no one else is going to ask for Valentina, but come on. I mean, her last fight, I was there at UFC 245. She fought Viviane Araújo. She missed weight by 6 pounds. She came in at 131. So first off, she missed weight. And second off, she beat an opponent that, was a lot smaller than her. And also an opponent that, doesn't have that much experience at the UFC. So to me, it's like Jessica, I know she's looked better flyweight 4 wins and 1 loss, only lost to Shevchenko. And this division's extremely weak, but there's no way she's going to get this title shot. Having said that, I mean, this division is really weak, guys. And, last few days I've seen a lot of people online saying, hey, maybe it's time to get rid of this weight class, the women's flyweight division. Maybe it's better just to have, women's strawweight, women's bantamweight. It's interesting. I mean, Shevchenko definitely is kind of in that Demetrius Johnson territory of flyweight, men's flyweight a few years ago, where she just dominated the competition. Like, you look at the rankings, how many of these fighters actually would have a chance against Shevchenko? I don't think any of them would. She beat I already. She beat Chukagian. Calderwood, I don't think, has a chance. Maya doesn't have a chance. Modafferi would get smoked. Murphy doesn't have a chance. Araújo, nope. Andrea Lee, no. Macy Barber, no. Alexis Davis, no. Antonina Shevchenko, her sister, nah, I don't think so. Montana De La Rosa, no. Mara Romero Barella, nope. Ji Young Kim, no. Polyana Botello, no. I mean, look at some of the fighters ranked in the top 15. Like, Polyana Botello, really? That's a top 15 fighter in the sport? Come on. She doesn't. There's no fighter here that she wouldn't smash, in my opinion. Like, the only competitive fight at all would maybe be Calderwood, because she does have pretty good striking. Maybe she could strike with her on the feet for more than a couple rounds before she gets knocked out. I don't think Shevchenko loses to any of them. So to me, it's like the most interesting matchup is actually the trilogy with Amanda Nunes. But, Nunes is doing her own thing at 135 and Valentina's doing her thing at 125. Maybe they meet down the road. But, I mean, if you guys – is there anyone at 125 that you guys think could beat Valentina? Let me know if you think there is. Maybe someone at 135 could move down and challenge her, possibly, or someone could move up. I guess Zhang could possibly move up, or, Rose maybe. I don't really know. I just don't see any of these fighters really giving her any bit of a hard time. I just think she smashed everyone. So, people are saying maybe close down this division. I don't know. I think that's a little harsh. I think it's a little premature. But at the same time, if she keeps dominating the competition, it's going to get boring. So we'll see what happens. But it's very possible she could kind of be like Demetrius Johnson, just dominating competition, and people just kind of get bored of her. At least I'll say this: she is marketable and she is finishing fights, so that's a good thing. Next up, Korean Zombie. He was on Ariel's show yesterday, did a pretty good interview, and basically called Alexander Volkanovski boring. He said his fights are boring. He said he's a boring fighter, and but he says he wants to fight him. So Korean Zombie is calling Volkanovski out. I would love to see that fight. I think it's a great fight. I have no interest in seeing the Max Holloway rematch. I understand why the UFC is going to give him the rematch, most likely. They respect Max Holloway. Max Holloway's did a lot for the UFC. He has stepped up so many times when the UFC wanted him to. He's did so much for the company. He had a really bad performance against Volkanovski in the first fight at 245. I do think a rematch would probably be more competitive. I do think Volkanovski dominated that first fight. Rematch would probably be a bit closer, but there's nothing in that first fight that says to me that Max would win. So to me, I think Max, if anything, should probably take another fight in the meantime against someone like Zombie or Zabit, someone like that, to get his rhythm back, get his confidence back, get a win in the win column. And Volkanovski's hurt right now, so he probably won't be back until the summer anyways with that broken hand. So to me, this division's got to flesh itself out. I mean, Zombie's calling him out, I get it, but maybe Zombie versus someone like Zabit. Well, Zabit's probably going to fight Ortega. That's not confirmed yet, but there's a chance that's going to happen. Zombie versus Yair in a rematch would be interesting. Zombie versus Holloway. That fight's never happened. That'd be a really interesting fight. I think there's a lot of really good fights in this division with Volkanovski out right now. So, I think maybe do a couple of these fights. Maybe do Ortega versus Zabit and Zombie versus Holloway, and then the most impressive winner gets title shot. But to me, just gifting Max Holloway a title shot, I don't know about that. As far as Zombie calling Volkanovski boring, I mean, I know the last two fights were not very exciting. I was at both fights. I was at the one in Vegas. It wasn't the greatest fight. I was at the Aldo fight in Brazil. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but he still got his hand raised. He's fighting dangerous guys and did what he had to do to win. So to me, I can't criticize him too much. Can't knock the guy too much. Not the most exciting fights whatsoever, but still got the win. So to me, Volkanovski's doing what he needs to do. And for, Zombie said the other day he doesn't knock anyone out. I don't know about that either, because he knocked out Chad Mendes a couple years ago and a couple other guys as well in the last few years. So, Zombie wants to fight him. I get it, but some of his criticisms to me are a little bit off. Excuse me. Next up, I want to talk about Invicta FC here. Invicta wants to use open scoring. They're going to use open scoring their next event. The Kansas Athletic Commission is going to allow the use of open scoring. Excuse me, guys. It's interesting, right? Like, open scoring is definitely something that's been talked about the last few days. I mean, it's been talked about forever. Basically, the argument is MMA, boxing, kickboxing, although Glory, I think, does use open scoring. But generally, MMA and boxing are like some of the only sports that do not show the scores during the competition. I don't know about open scoring. I think it takes a lot away from the fight. I think it takes a lot of the anticipation away from who's going to get the hand raised. I know what the argument for it is, if the fighter knows they're down or up, they won't fight in a certain way. If the fighter knows they're down 2 rounds or 3 rounds or whatever it is, they'll probably go for the kill and try to get the win. Or if the fighter's up 2 rounds, they might just coast to get the win. But to me, it's like, I don't think open scoring is going to change much, and I'll tell you why. Because in my opinion, it's not the showing the scorecards. I don't think that's the problem here. I think it's the judges that's the problem. And my good friend Aaron Broadstar proposed a decimal system, like a 9.5, 8.5 system, which has been used before in MMA back in MFC. They used that in Edmonton for a Ryan Jimmo fight, the late Ryan Jimmo, I think against Sokaju. These judges came in at 10-9, guys. So I told Aaron, I don't really agree with that. He's not the first person to propose that. To me, like I said to Aaron on Twitter yesterday, I was like, Aaron, the problem is not the scoring system, it's the judges. Because honestly, a lot of us can figure out who won or lost the fight using the current scoring system. So to me, the 10-9 it's not a great system. There's got to be a better way. I just don't think this is the way. I don't think open scoring is going to solve the problem of bad judges that do not know what they're watching. It just takes education. It takes experience. And it takes maybe cleaning up the sport as far as the judges go. I think firing a lot of these judges, bringing in new judges. I think bringing in people that really understand the sport at a different level and understand the scoring system. That's the thing. I think you have to understand the scoring system. And I think a lot of people do not understand. I think a lot of people, and I hate to say this, but I think a lot of people have not really read through the unified rules before. I think a lot of people have not read through ABC's rules for how to score a fight. And then they go and watch fights and they think they know what they're talking about. Guys, if you haven't did so, definitely read the unified rules. Definitely read, the ABC's rules on how to score fights, how to judge fights properly. If you haven't did so, then really, in my opinion, you don't have any place to say this is the way a fight's supposed to be scored. Again, fights are supposed to be scored using effective striking and grappling, and whoever won that gets the round. And if that's tied, which is rare in my opinion, because usually there is someone that won that, then you go to aggressiveness and octagon control. So again, I think a lot of people are just a little confused with the scoring system, and I think that's why, because we have bad judges, and I think they're screwing a lot of people over. So open scoring is interesting. I just don't think it's going to be this be-all, end-all solution that a lot of people think it's going to be. I think it could help, possibly, but here's my other argument. Would Dominic Reyes or Jon Jones really have changed the way they fought that fight? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think they would have did what they needed to do, and that's what they did in the fight. I don't think it would have changed anything. So that's just my take on it. It's interesting to see Invicta try it out. Maybe other commissions and promotions will try it out, but I just don't think it's going to be as great as a lot of people think it's going to be. Kevin Scott, thanks, Kevin, for your questions. 125 is so new. Give it time to develop. A few years from now, if Dern develops striking, or BJJ can beat anyone. Miranda Maverick looked amazing on Friday. She could compete in 2 to 3 years as well. Yeah, you're right. Dern is still good. I don't know what to say about Dern. I mean, listen, I don't want to come off the wrong way here by any means. I mean, women want to start families, but I just feel like maybe that's her thing right now. Like she has a young child, she has a husband now. Like that's what she's focused on, and not so much the MMA thing. I could be wrong. I think she's still a good prospect, but that's what the feeling I'm getting. But we'll see in her next fight for sure. That's the difference between women and men. I mean, women really have to, because they have to have the child, and that's their main focus. That's the difference between male and female MMA fighters. You see a lot of female fighters, they have to take time off in their career and lose years of their career. Like Nina Ansaroff right now she's out. Dern missed a year. So, it happens. And Ronda Rousey retired. Now she's, I think, going to have a family with Travis Brown. So like it's a tough spot for a woman to be in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, Miranda Maverick, she's definitely good, and we'll see what happens with them. Kevin, watching Glory when they use open scoring, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't improve the judging. It doesn't impact the action either. It's just nice to know as the fight happens. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's as great as everyone thinks it is. Again, as bad as it sounds, like I enjoy like waiting for Bruce Buffer to read the scorecards. Like there's something to be said about being like, okay, who won the fight? I understand completely what they're saying about just the fighters knowing, and like again in other sports we don't know the scores for most sports, but I just feel like maybe combat sports is a little different. I mean, combat sports is different. You hurt people. You don't do that in other sports, most other sports. And Kevin, you're right. A lot of these judging controversies are a result of fans not knowing what they're commentating on. Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but not just fans, coaches too. I mean, I saw John Kavanaugh. He was basically saying like, I think whoever does more in the later round should win the fight. That's not how fight scored. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like that comment was so stupid. It's getting retweeted by everyone. Like, come on. And he even said like, this is not how fights are supposed to score. This is how I score fights. Why even post that then? Why spread misinformation? Especially a guy like Kavanaugh who's so respected and everyone loves the guy because he's Connor's coach. People are going to read that and be like, oh, okay, this is how fights are scored. It's not how fights are scored. Every round is judged individually and you add them up at the end of the fight. And here's another thing, and I've talked about this the other day. Just because Jon Jones is a champ doesn't mean anything. Once the fight starts, there's no champ. It's just two guys in a cage or two women in a cage. You don't give the round to the guy who was holding the belt because you thought it was a close round and you're going to give it to him. You give it to who you thought won the round. Again, so much misinformation about the judging in the sport, and I'd love to see it cleaned up, but it's something we've been talking about for years. I mean, I remember talking about the GSP Johnny Hendricks fight 7 years ago or the Shogun Machida fight 11 years ago. I mean, these decisions are something we'll always talk about. Kevin Scott, did you see the tweet from the Solis judge a few days before the event saying John's just going to smoke Reyes? That is not actually Joe Solis, the judge. I did see the Twitter account yesterday. At first I thought it was real, but it is a fake account. Whoever made that did a great job with it, though. It looks legitimate, right? It is a fake account. Aaron confirmed that actually yesterday because I think he was criticizing Aaron. Aaron's like, you're a parody account. So it is a fake account, but a lot of fighters got basically. Eric Anders posted something on there. I saw Jason House, the manager for James Krause, saying like, "You're unprofessional. I'm going to go and appeal my loss for James Krause." Guys, it was a parody account. It's pretty funny in my opinion. Although, who has time to like make an account and go in and talk to people on Twitter? It's kind of weird, right? Like people really have nothing better to do with their time. Anyways, if you guys have any more questions, throw them in. I'm going to go to fight announcements now because I missed a lot of fight announcements. Obviously, yesterday talking with Cole about UFC 247. So let's start with this one. UFC Portland gets a bunch of fights and some really good fights here. Interesting fights. Main event will be Alistair Overeem against Walt Harris. So a really good fight in my opinion. And you know what? I actually said this fight would probably happen after Overeem's last loss. I said, I still think this fight makes sense, and the UFC obviously agreed. So definitely a good fight. Alistair Overeem is coming off the loss to Jairzinho Rosenstruck, but he was winning the whole fight up to the last 5 seconds. I mean, we all know he was going to win the decision, but he got caught, got knocked out, his lip ripped open. It's amazing how fast he's coming back. But before that, he had won back-to-back fights by knockout over Pavlovich and Olenek. I don't think he's completely done yet. We know his chin is not very good, but the guy's still dangerous. Walt Harris, poor guy, obviously lost his daughter. He's coming back a few months later now. He's on a 4-fight unbeaten streak, knocked out Olenek and Spivak in his last 2 fights. Guy's good, man. But I think a lot of people forget Walt Harris is not a young guy. He's 36, so he's a lot older than a lot of people think. He's not a prospect by any means. He's been around the UFC for a while. Overeem's 39. It's crazy, right? The experience difference. It's a tough fight to call. I mean, this is definitely it's a heavyweight fight. It's a true coin flip. Someone's probably going to get knocked out in this fight. I don't see it going 5 rounds. Overeem is definitely dangerous still, but Harris with that power, and I think the speed advantage as well. That could be dangerous in this fight. My initial lean, it's a little bit towards Walt Harris. I just think Overeem's chin is pretty suspect at this point, but Overeem is dangerous. And honestly, if he gets takedowns in this fight, he could ride out Harris and maybe grind a decision out. So it's a coin flip fight, guys. It's really going to depend on what the odds look like. If Harris is a massive favorite, I would go with Overeem. But if it's close to even, I'd probably have to favor Harris a little bit. Also on that card, there's a few other fights here. This is a really good fight. Vicente Luque against Randy Brown. Love this fight. Randy Brown coming off back-to-back wins over Warley Alves and Brian Barberina. The guy has looked fantastic. 6-3 overall in the UFC, but lately has looked really good. Dangerous guy everywhere the fight goes. Vicente Luque, same thing. Super dangerous overall in the UFC. He is 10-3, and he's coming off a loss to Stephen Thompson before that. Won 6 straight fights, including wins over Mike Perry and Nico Price. Super dangerous fighter. I mean, both these guys are really good. I do lean towards Luque a little bit. I'm just really high on this guy, but Randy Brown is definitely dangerous, and it should be a real good fight. Next up, we got Carla Esparza against Michelle Waterson. This is an interesting fight as well. Carla Esparza coming off back-to-back wins over Alexa Grasso and Verna Jandiroba. She has looked pretty good as of late, and that wrestling, I mean, is always going to be able to keep her in fights. Michelle Waterson coming off a loss to Joanna in her last fight before had won 3 straight fights. Striker versus grappler fight, obviously. You know, Carla's going to go for takedowns. Michelle's going to try to keep the fight on the feet. Definitely hard to see who should be favored here. I think it's a pretty close fight. Another coin flip fight. I guess I'd lean towards Waterson a little bit, just because I think if the fight stays standing, her striking should be a lot better. But Esparza with that wrestling is won a lot of fights as an underdog, and she gets counted out a lot, and she's pretty dangerous. All right, next up, we got Alessio de Chirico versus Markus Perez. Alessio de Chirico, he is overall in the UFC 3-4, so not great record. Taking on Markus Perez here. And Markus Perez, he is, second here. Markus Perez, 12-3 in his career, and he is coming off of a loss to Wellington Turman, so that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Tough fight to call. It's another fight that I think could go either way. Both guys have been kind of inconsistent in the UFC. But, you know, Markus Perez, I think, is slightly a better fighter, so I guess I'd lean towards him. But, again, you know, this card's a few months off. It's in April. They just announced the card, UFC Portland and Moda Center, and where the Portland Trailblazers play. Also for that card, one other fight here, we got a heavyweight bout between Dontel Mays and Rodrigo Nascimento. Interesting fight. Dontel Mays, he's coming off a bad loss to Cyril Gahn by heel hook. So, I mean, that's surprising. Before that, he won 4 straight fights. A dangerous guy for sure, a big dude. Got knockout power. And Rodrigo Nascimento, 7-0. Coming off a nice win on Contender Series, Michael Martinick by submission, undefeated in his career. I guess I would lean towards him. I don't know. Like, Mays is dangerous, but I'm not super high on him by any means. And just a couple other fights here. UFC Brasilia gets fight. Bruno Silva against David Dvorak. Don't know a ton about these guys, I'll be honest. Bruno Bullock Silva, I know a little bit. He is a training partner of Henry Cejudo, coming off a loss to Khalid Taha in his UFC debut. And then David Dvorak, he's making his debut. He's 17-3, so he's got a lot of experience here. And he's on a nice win streak. He actually is on a 13-fight win streak. But, again, a lot of these fights are against guys in Europe that a lot of us haven't heard of. I guess I'd lean towards him. I mean, 13-fight win streak is nothing to scoff at, despite a low-level competition. The last fight here is Sarah Alpar against Duda Santana at UFC Oklahoma City, another fight card that was announced where the Thunder play. Sarah Alpar, 9-4, coming off a win over Shayna Young on the Contender Series. Shayna Young actually was just signed to the UFC as well, and she'll be taking on Macy Chiasson this weekend. But yeah, Alpar, three straight wins, and definitely coming off a nice win over fighters also in the UFC. And then Duda Santana, 3-1, lost to Bea Malecki. I guess I lean towards Alpar, but definitely a close fight. And yeah, I did mention Shayna Young. She got signed to the UFC, and she'll be taking on Chiasson. But I'm going to talk about that fight with Cole in half an hour when we break down UFC Fight Night Rio Rancho. So definitely jump in about half an hour to hear us break down that card. Last question here by Kevin before I get out of here. How about Shane Young getting pulled for Invicta fight on Friday due to illness, now filling in for Nico this Saturday? Talk about failing up. Also pretty terrible look for Nico. Yeah, so Nico Montano will pull out of another fight. I think the UFC probably is going to release her at this point. I mean, she's just not healthy, and she just screws up a lot. So I think they'll probably cut their losses there. As far as Shane Young getting pulled from illness, I mean, was it really an illness, or did they know something was up with Nico and they wanted her to go and fight Chiasson this weekend? I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm completely buying that. Anyways, all right, that's it for this show, the news show. But like I said, jump in half an hour. Myself and Cole Shelton will be breaking down UFC Rio Rancho. Definitely check that out. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter at MMAOB podcast, MMAOddsbreaker.com. Check me out at bjpen.com, MMAratings.net as well. I got an article there on Jon Jones and why the Stipe fight still makes sense. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Kevin, thanks for the questions as always, my man. And yeah, jump in half an hour. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to send them in then. But we will be breaking down UFC Rio Rancho Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz too. All right, guys, have a good one. I'll be back very soon. Bye.